What about you folks, and welcome to LST Plays. Sorry for the impromptu absence of leave and therefore lack of videos. Events conspired against me these past few weeks. Been a bit under the weather and stuff, but I'm back now anyway, and hopefully we can get some more videos out soon. Today though, we're taking a look at Warhammer 40,000 Eternal Crusade, recently released from Alpha on Steam, back on the 23rd there. And as usual, we'll be talking about the pros and then some of the cons, of which there are unfortunately quite a few. But first, let's talk about War of the Hammer variety. I've been a fan of Games Workshop's tabletop epic for years. When my first venture into 40k was back in the early 90s, and being the purchase of a set of Dark Angels with a codex, which is basically their rule and lore book. I didn't play much of the actual tabletop game itself, but I got a huge amount of enjoyment out of painting the figurines, and I still have a large collection to this day, as well as still using the Citadel paint range to create some paintings and things like that. So I'm not going to go into massive amounts of details about the Warhammer 40,000 universe, or the Citadel range, Games Workshop range. It's just so large, but the takeaway is that there are a huge variety of different races and beings in the 40,000 universe that are all jostling for power and control of planets and systems, and it's basically a large variation of good versus evil. So you've got lots of different races who think they're good, and lots of evil races, basically. The lore and the history involved in this universe really is up there with any sci-fi epic such as Star Trek or Star Wars. A lot of the success of the series can be laid at the feet of the rich lore and characters, for sure. Not just the sort of tabletop gameplay and the enjoyment that a lot of people get out of it, but the actual stories and things like that back up the actual main overarching theme very, very well, and the tabletop game. So with that said, the series has spawned a huge variety of video games, the most notable being the Dawn of War series and Space Marine, which is a good place to start before we look at some of the features in Eternal Crusade. I was a big fan of Space Marine, and I think the comparison between this game and it has to be made. From the graphics and the animations down to the controls and multiplayer gameplay. So why, if Space Marine already exists, why give us another version of it? Another third-person 40k shooter multiplayer style game. And the reason was, I think that while people loved Space Marine and really loved the multiplayer and saw a lot of promise in the multiplayer gameplay, it was lacking different races. You could only really play as the Space Marines as like a friendly chapter, and then you had orcs and possibly chaos. It's been a wee while since I played it, but orcs were in the main campaign, and I think chaos were in the multiplayer campaign. But people wanted to play as different races, and they wanted to be able to pick their favourite army to go to war in. So, as I say, in the multiplayer for Space Marine, you only got the choice of Chaos or Space Marines. In this, the developers promised us that there would be numerous races, and then they would be releasing races down the line. So for this game, they launched with Eldar, Space Marines, Orcs, and Chaos as the playable races, and the developers have also sort of hinted at that Dark Eldar and Tau would be the next playable races. So it's easy to see why this game exists. I don't know why they couldn't build in extra factions into Space Marine. It's probably because it would require a complete overhaul of that game. It was built on an older engine, so I imagine that this game is existing primarily because of the support and the love for Space Marine, to which there's actually still quite a lot of players playing Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine in the multiplayer. And that lets us segue then into Warhammer 40,000 Eternal Crusade. So back when this game was first announced, or when I first heard of it, it was primarily going to be an MMO game. Now, it still says on the Steam storefront page that it's an MMO. It still lists that in the description, but in all honesty, it's not an MMO. It's a competitive arena shooter, is what I would say. It's very similar to Battlefield in its style of gameplay, in terms of just you get vehicles. You can drive those vehicles, transport your friends in the vehicles, and you can drive across a map, essentially. It's not an MMO. I wouldn't call Battlefield an MMO, even though it supports the same amount of players. 64 players, I believe, is the limit in some of the larger maps on this one. Each faction comes with about 6 different classes. So you've got your tactical marines, which are your just run and gun style shooting type guys. You've got your devastator marines, which are heavy support and anti-vehicles. So they'll come with different weapons that you can unlock and purchase. You've got the assault marines, which are the guys with the jump packs, which can jump up and then slam down on the ground and also can move around the map pretty quickly. You've got the ground assault guys, which are like the aerial troops, except that they come with a shield and they can block infantry weapons on the ground. They're actually very good at close combat. They're actually, I think, better than the jump pack marines. And then you've got these guys here, which I'm playing as, which is the apothecary class, or for the Eldar you've got like a warlock. And essentially each army comes with a class or a different type of loadout that you can heal other players with. And they're very, very handy. There is actually another class after that, which is called the veteran class, which I haven't unlocked yet. So I can't comment on exactly what that class is, but it'll be a similar idea to the other classes that you have in the game. So in terms of some of the pros for the game, so if you're interested by this game, what may persuade you to buy this? Well, first of all, I'll start off by saying that you have to probably be a Warhammer fan. I think for the asking price, and we'll get into that in a little bit, you do have to have some kind of understanding of Warhammer and the universe, and you do sort of almost have to sort of have a bit of a passion for this style of, I suppose, game, and it's primarily for the character designs and the rich lore. As I've sort of already mentioned, why I sort of got into it is that I really like the lore, I really like the models originally, but you sort of have to have almost an understanding of what the Warhammer 40,000 universe is and what it sort of means when you're sort of playing through it. You'll notice that there's a lot of detail in this game. The character models are very good, similar to the Space Marine character models. They're actually not as good as the Space Marine character models, but it is still an early release, and they are planning on releasing a lot more different parts for your Space Marine, and you have a lot more customization options in this game, and that leads us into another pro then, and the customization. So what you can do in the game is purchase different armor pieces which are going to expand your character's look. Essentially, when you start off, you've got a very basic character, and that goes for every single faction in the game. So for your Orcs, Eldar, Chaos, they all look very bland when you start off. You can pick a specific faction style. There are different Space Marine types in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, so I picked Dark Angels because that's what I know, but there are Blood Angels, there's Space Wolves, there's Iron Fists or Imperial Fists, and various other different ones, and it's the same for Eldar and Orcs, and they all come with different color schemes. So it's very basic, but it's for somebody who knows the Warhammer lore will be probably enticed by that. The fact that you can play as probably one of your favorite army types. They haven't put in every single type of faction yet within the sort of overall sort of like Space Marines. There isn't. I don't think Salamanders, and as I sort of showcased in the video earlier, you saw the Legion of the Damned army outfit for Space Marine. They're not in the game yet, and they probably will put them into the game, and they'll probably charge for that. Again, you can see the impending cost coming, but it's nonetheless, it's very sort of true to the original 40,000 style. The look is very cool. You can build a character model that looks like it's from the Horus Heresy era, which will mean something to a Warhammer fan anyway. But you can basically live out your fantasy of being a 40,000 Space Marine or an Orc or an Eldar character and charging across a battlefield with a chainsword. And the weapons do look, feel and sound very, very good. But I mean, again, they've just taken some of the assets, I think, from Space Marine and put them into this game, and there's nothing wrong with that because Space Marine plays very, very well. Now, as I sort of mentioned before, there are they've expanded on the gameplay style that Space Marine had. So of course in Space Marine you couldn't really have an apothecary and things like that, and in this one you do have the ability to heal. So it's a very, I think, balanced in terms of the actual loadouts that you can get in the game. But that does mean that we have to segue into some of the negatives, because there's actually a point here I want to make, and that is that the game is pretty imbalanced. You'll probably see in this video I die quite a lot, and there are various different reasons for that. Some of them are down to the balancing of races. Whatever reason the developers have done this, different races have seemed to be different seem to be better in different situations. For instance, Eldar are very good in close combat, and it's the same with Orcs. Chaos seem to be fairly rounded to the Space Marine standard at the moment, but for some reason, just whatever reason it is, Eldar and Orcs do a stupid amount of damage in close range, and you're almost going to lose every single time you go up against them, depending on who you're playing with. I would imagine if you play with a big group of people that you can communicate with, you might stand a chance, but at the moment there's lots of different little sort of groups of people playing the game, and it makes it very hard to win when you're coming up against a group of Eldar players who are organised and coordinated. Now you could say that, well, maybe it's just we're no good at playing the game, but the community vibe seems to be at the moment, and this goes across the board, that it's just not balanced. The individual loadouts are great and they are fairly balanced across the different races, as I say, but just the overall theme is just, it's not quite there yet, and that's a massive flaw when you're dealing with a persistent online competitive shooter. The game really needs to be balanced, and at the moment it's not quite there. Now, what I will say as a pro is that the developers are very proactive in terms of just releasing updates and trying to fix these issues that the player base is complaining about. So although I can stand here and say it's not balanced, it should be at some stage. So there's a little bit of a positive to that anyway. Cost. This is another big issue. The cost to get you into this game, and why I sort of said that you have to sort of be a Warhammer fan really to actually want to play this game, is because the cost of this game is $39.99. Now you may be looking at this and going, well, the graphics aren't exactly blowing me away, and that is another negative, is that the graphics are, even though it's built in the Unreal 4 engine or switched to the Unreal 4 engine, it doesn't look fantastic. It doesn't stand out. It just looks like Space Marine, and you'll see that from the comparison I did earlier. I just sort of showcased some of the movement in Space Marine, and this game just, for a game being released in 2016, although it's been in development for some time, doesn't blow you away from the graphics, and that could be a negative for a lot of people as well. But just going back a little bit on the cost of things. So the initial cost is $39.99 if you were to go to the Steam storefront and pick this up today. Now, there could be a reason for that in terms of they're planning to release this on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And no doubt if it goes into stores, it will probably see that price range being put onto it as an RRP. But it doesn't feel like a full price game. It almost feels like a free-to-play game. And the reason why I say that is because they've added in extra things like you can buy credits to purchase armor packs. So as I mentioned earlier, you can customize your characters, which is fantastic, but to almost buy those armor packs you actually have to purchase additional credits. And if we look at the Steam store page, you'll see that they range in different bundles, similar to a mobile game, and they go all the way up to £80. £80 is just, it's incredible. That's 2 copies of this game in points for £80. It's just, it blows my mind. That is just almost unforgivable that they're charging full whack for a game that's literally just come from alpha, because that's the next point I'm going to segue into, and they're charging £40 for it, and so much for their in-game currency, as it were. Now, as I sort of just touched on there, the game was in alpha up until the 23rd, and then it got released straight into just a full release game, which is sort of bizarre. Well, it's not bizarre. What's happened, and I can't really fault the developers in this, the publishers, Namco Bandai, I believe it is, have pushed the game out. They've basically told the developers, this game needs to go out, it's cost us probably so much money, wherever that is, and it needs to go out now. And that's probably why we've seen a straight from alpha to full release of Warhammer 40,000 Eternal Crusade. I certainly think the developers probably wanted more time to fix the issues in the game, like the balancing, adding in more armor and weapons, and just generally polishing the game a little bit more. And it's a shame that Namco have actually just sort of forced a hand in this one. That's what the common consensus is with the community at the moment, is that this game has been fully launched and it's not finished. So for people like me and a lot of the community, people in the community out there, we are sort of touching on this game with a bit of a pinch of salt. We're not expecting massive things yet, we just expect them in the long run. So if I had to wrap it up and say, is this game worth picking up, I would say this. At the moment, it's a no. It's definitely a no. As much as it pains me, I love Warhammer 40,000. I loved Space Marine. I love the fact that they've kept the controls, even the button layouts and things, if you're using a controller, are exactly the same in this one as they were in Space Marine. The universe is expanded. They've got nice big open maps. There seems to be a lot of gameplay types in it. You've even got a PvE mode that was added in recently, where you can almost perform like a Space Hulk type gameplay, where you go through some dungeons and take on the Tyranids. It's just not worth the money at the moment. In 2 months, 3 months time, I'd like to say maybe it will be. But I do have this underlying sort of sneaking suspicion that this game should almost be free to play, or at the very least it should be price pointed at about £25. 40 quid is just unacceptable, I think, for the current state of this game. The money that they're probably making or hoping to make from the in-game currency, I think, should hopefully make up for the fact that maybe they're going to have to do something with the actual price on the game, and hopefully we will see it drop down, and that will then increase the player base. But for right now, it's going to be a no for the game. Hold off and just wait and see what happens with it. Add it in your follow list in Steam. Go and check out people like Chapter Master Valrek, who has a YouTube channel, and that seems to be all he really plays is 40,000 games, especially Eternal Crusade, and he has some fantastic news pieces on the game, so I'm not going to go into too much depth in terms of just what's in the game and the overall sort of upcoming news for the game, because there's people out there that do it much better than me. But for just an impression video, I hope this has been a massive help for you, or at least a slight help, and you can let me know down below in the comments if I've done a good service to this game, if you think I've hit the nail on the head, or if you think that if you're playing the game and you think that perhaps I've been too harsh on the game, do let me know. And by the time this video comes out, the developers may have actually addressed quite a lot of the issues. They, as I say, they do patch the game quite regularly, so keep an eye on that if you're interested. I suggest following it on Steam. You'll see the different update patch notes coming out. It's definitely worth keeping an eye on if you are interested by the game. Anyway, that'll just about do us, so don't forget to leave a comment below in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.